Today, I'm going to explain a sci-fi drama movie called Love. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in 1864 during the American Civil War, where we see a group of soldiers hiding underneath a bunker. Moments later, their bunker gets blown up by an enemy attack that leads to an intense battle. We then meet a soldier named Lee Briggs, who is also preparing to fight. However, he's summoned by his commander, who informs him that a mysterious object has been discovered east of the Colorado Basin. The commander then assigns Lee the task of going there to investigate this object. Though the soldier is hesitant to abandon the group during the fight, he eventually agrees to the mission. As he leaves, he narrates his experience in the war and the numerous epiphanies and moral questions it has raised. The scene then cuts to 175 years later, in the year 2039, where we meet a US astronaut named Lee Miller. He is the first astronaut to set foot on the station in 2 decades, as it has been abandoned for unknown reasons. He is now tasked with assessing its condition and performing any necessary repairs to make it habitable for future astronauts. Upon his arrival, Lee speaks with Mission Control in Houston and gives them his initial briefing. The team shares that they have been monitoring his critical stats and assure him that he's good to stay. In the following days, Lee establishes a daily routine of exercising, reading, and listening to music. He also maintains regular communication with his team on Earth and updates them about his work. One day, while Lee is going about his routine, he receives a message from Mission Control. It turns out to be his brother from Earth, who shares good news about his newborn child. He also expresses how much he misses his brother, which makes Lee very emotional. However, just then, the video suddenly cuts off and a loud radio interference disrupts his communication channel. Lee asks Mission Control if they've picked up on it as well. There's no response. He tries again, but the communication has fallen into complete silence. Believing the radio must be malfunctioning, he tries to fix it, but the manual is in Russian, which frustrates him. A few days later, Lee checks the space station's communication systems, which are still not working properly. He is stuck in orbit around the Earth, and his anxiety grows with each passing day. Despite his dire situation, he continues to explore the station and repair whatever he can. One day, Lee finally receives a single recorded message from someone at Mission Control. The man on the other end seems worried and informs Lee that something terrible has happened on Earth. He reveals that they no longer have the resources to communicate with him in real time, and there is no one available to bring him back. Upon hearing this, Lee begins to panic and worries about his family. He tries to find out more about what's going on, but receives no response. Enraged, he warns Mission Control that if they're conducting some kind of stress or isolation test, they'd better stop. He questions what is really happening and pleads for an answer, but unfortunately, there's no reply. In the end, Lee realizes that he might be stuck here for an indefinite amount of time. Therefore, he checks the life support systems to ensure that he can survive as long as necessary. He then decompresses various sectors of the station to preserve oxygen and starts rationing his food. To maintain his sanity, Lee sticks to his established routine of exercise, music, and reading. But as time drags on, loneliness becomes his only companion and begins to affect his mental state. In the following days, Lee feels increasingly trapped and anxious. He begins to act out in frustration, throwing objects around and staring out the window. He notices that cities on Earth are shutting down, and one by one, the lights go out, plunging the planet into total darkness. Lee then stumbles upon photographs of astronauts who lived on the space station before him, starved for any form of human connection. He begins talking to the images. One particular photo of an attractive woman catches his attention, and he begins speaking to her as if she was there with him. "May I feed you some space powder and pet you, miss?" Later, while Lee is dreaming about the woman, he is abruptly awakened by smoke filling the space station. In a moment of panic, he rushes to his breathing apparatus and quickly identifies the issue causing the smoke buildup. Lee opens a valve to vent the smoke from the station, and the pressure swiftly draws it out. Everything soon returns to normal, but this incident serves as a harsh reminder that he is alone in the midst of a crisis, and time is running out. Next, Lee sits in front of the picture of the female astronaut, losing himself in fantasies about ideal dates. He imagines taking her to an Italian restaurant and then watching a sunset on the beach, feeling the sea breeze on his face. But as the days pass and hours stretch into an eternity, loneliness and despair consume him. He realizes he's going to die anyway and begins doing things that are prohibited on the space station. Lee takes off all his clothes and sits on a chair, spinning around in circles. What a badass. He even takes a shower in the spaceship, causing a lot of water to spill out, not caring that it might damage the machines. He repeats repeatedly listens to his brother's only recorded message and does anything that will help him pass the time. One day, as Lee tries to play his brother's message again, his computer breaks down due to power issues. This minor setback leaves him really frustrated and angry. As time passes and the power issues worsen, he moves to an unpressurized module of the space station to attempt repairs. After this, Lee begins to hallucinate, seeing the female astronauts from the photographs surrounding him, talking, laughing, and flirting with him, though he realizes that these are just illusions. He continues to entertain them because his mind stopped functioning rationally some time ago. A few days later, as Lee navigates through a depressurized section of the space station to repair the power module, he discovers a book wrapped in an ancient-looking cover. He returns to the main part of the space station and opens the book, which is dated 1864. It turns out to be the journal of a man named Captain Lee Briggs, whom we saw at the beginning of the movie. Lee begins to read and is fascinated by Briggs's account of the Civil War, which happened long ago. At one moment, he also hallucinates a female voice asking him what his favorite season is. When Lee tries to answer, he mumbles for a while and then responds that he has forgotten. The woman replies in a melancholy tone that there are no seasons anymore, but only time, which keeps passing by. As he reads in the book, Lee learns that Briggs had mentioned that despite his best efforts in the Civil War, he was losing in every possible way. Lee resonates with the soldier's experiences, and each word reminds him of the uncertainty he is feeling. With nothing else to do, he begins to copy the diary's drawings onto the walls of the space station, imagining what the scenes of the Civil War must have been like. He then gets bored and begins playing cards with himself. When he loses, he walks away in anger, muttering that he is a sore loser. One day, Lee reads about Briggs being assigned to investigate the mysterious object. However, he is shocked to discover that the journal ends before revealing what the object actually was. The lack of answers infuriates him, and in a fit of rage, he throws the diary aside. Bored and restless, he then begins hallucinating and talking to the woman again. She asks him if it bothers him that she's not real. However, Lee falls silent and doesn't respond. They then discuss the possibility of abandoning the station, but he suggests that if he leaves, the rescue mission will find no one, which would be a terrible loss. The scene then cuts to the year 2045, where we see that Lee is still on the space station. He hasn't been able to contact mission control, and now his oxygen system is also failing. Finally, Lee makes the painful decision to give up. Rather than continuing to live his life in misery, he records a final message with a heavy heart and sends it to Earth. In his message, he reveals that he's been living on the space station for over 6 years now, hoping someone will rescue him. However, now the life support system is no longer reliable, and he's slowly suffocating from the lack of oxygen. He reflects that he would rather have Earth be his last refuge than remain in this cold and desolate station. Lee then mentions that he still does not understand the circumstances that led to his abandonment. He wonders why, in these 6 years, no one attempted to reach out to him. So, with a deep sense of desolation, he has now decided to abandon his post. After this, Lee puts on a spacesuit and decides to take a walk to end his life, but as he prepares to unhook the harness that connects him to the station, he suddenly feels a surge of doubt. The internal conflict intensifies, and Lee soon realizes that he cannot give up on his life so easily. In the end, he decides not to release the hook and makes his way back to the space station again. The scene then cuts to several more years later, where we see that Lee's hair has grown very long, and he has tattooed various designs all over his body. He has also drawn numerous pictures inspired by the descriptions from Briggs's diary, and hung them throughout the interior of the station. Lee has completely stopped cleaning, and the cramped spaces of his quarters resemble an animal's lair, which is a reflection of his deteriorating sanity. He constantly fantasizes, talks to himself, and experiences hallucinations. However, one day, someone from outside finally contacts Lee and gives him instructions about docking and transferring to another spaceship. It is unclear whether these events are happening in reality, or if they are just a figment of his disturbed imagination, as he may have lost his mind after such prolonged isolation. Unexcited, Lee rushes to the window and sees something that leaves him stunned. He quickly cuts his hair, shaves his beard, and prepares for docking. Upon reaching his destination, he discovers that the object he will dock with is a giant cube-shaped structure also orbiting the Earth. Next, Lee enters this structure, which looks like a man-made building, complete with corridors and doors. As he walks through, he explores several strange rooms, including one with a picture of a rocket taking off from Earth. another containing a typewriter on a table, and an auditorium. Finally, he arrives at a room that appears to house the structure's main server. In front of the server, a small old television plays an interview that Lee gave before leaving Earth for the space station. Lee presses a button and the room lights up. He then discovers a mainframe with a book titled A Love Story, as told by you. Inside this book, he finds pictures of Captain Lee Briggs with his discovery, a gigantic cube-like alien object that may have contributed to the advancement of human society. Lee then examines the book's list of references and is shocked to find his own name listed alongside a code. Confused, Lee enters the code number for himself and types it into the computer prompt. The very next second, he finds himself in an ordinary hotel room dressed in a suit with his spaceship folded on the bed beside him. A computer voice then begins to speak to him, informing him that this projection is the only way they could contact him. They express relief at having him here, but reveal that he is the last human. Everything related to the human civilization disappeared a while ago. The voice empathizes with Lee, saying they understand his loneliness, as connection is the most valuable thing a living being can have. It explains that this is why they have been listening to humans for a long time. It also reveals that this cube-like structure is like a scrapbook, which contains memories from humanity's brief existence. Finally, the voice mentions that they are looking forward to meeting him. In the final scene, Lee accepts the offer and opens the door to his hotel room. He is then transported into a pitch-black space, where a projection of the entire universe unfolds before him as he gazes at its vastness and beauty. He appears to find comfort and happiness in the sight. The movie then concludes with the computer voice stating that tonight has been a remarkable experiment in human connection that will be remembered by many.
If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to share it with your loved ones so they can enjoy it too. Your support really means a lot to us. Kindly leave a like, drop a comment, and join our growing family by staying connected with us. Yen.